All right, we are ready to get started. We are ready to get started. Today is Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. It's the City Council's regular meeting. Calling it to order and giving notice to members of the City Council and the general public that the City Council may vote to go into executive session, which will not be open to the public, for discussion and consultation with the city's attorneys for legal advice on any item listed on the following agenda. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Daggett.
Here.
Vice Mayor Aslan.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember House.
Present.
Councilmember Matthews.
Here.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Here.
Councilmember Sweet.
Here.
Vice Mayor, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Sure. Everybody stand as able.
Councilmember McCarthy, would you read our mission statement?
Thank you, Mayor. The mission of the City of Flagstaff is to protect and enhance the quality of life for all.
Thank you. Councilmember House, would you read our land acknowledgement?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The Flagstaff City Council humbly acknowledges the ancestral homelands of this area's indigenous nations and original stewards. These lands, still inhabited by Native descendants, border mountains sacred to indigenous peoples. We honor them, their legacies, their traditions, and their continued contributions. We celebrate their past, present, and future generations who will forever know this place as home.
Thank you. All right, next up is open call to the public, and this is where the public can address council about an item that is not on tonight's agenda. You have 3 minutes. There's a timer right here, and during open call to the public, the city council can't answer questions or ask you questions, but we can ask staff to follow up with you. So first up, we have Dennis Givens.
Thank you, Mayor Daggett, Vice Mayor, City Council, staff, citizens. My name is Dennis Givens of the South Side. Thanks for having me today. Last week, I went on a ride-along with the police department because I wanted to know how the police function, and I was just curious. And so on Monday morning, I went with Officer Matt Hayes, and we went on some few adventures. One kid was getting bullied, so she locked herself in her car, her parents' car, and we got her out, and then we took her to school, and I guess her scooter got stolen. And I thought it was really cool that cops do more than just pull people over. They actually help people, so you check it out. And I thought that was really cool to see kids waving at police officers. And we took some police reports, we talked to some unsheltered people, and then last Friday I went on a night shift, and that one was really crazy. There was a gunshot heard by multiple people in this neighborhood, and we were the first ones on the scene. I was super scared. I didn't even have a bulletproof vest, but the lady I was with, Nicole Holgate, she was super brave, and we didn't find anything, but wow, I just don't think that average citizens would go check on that, so I really give props to the police officers for really being brave. We also went to some fights. We also went to a domestic violence case, and we helped this lady move out of her boyfriend's apartment that was, I guess they were fighting, and there was like physical altercations. And what else did we do? We did some traffic stops. So it was really cool. I think everyone should go out and really ride with the police officers to really get a perspective on how hard it is to be a police officer. It's not easy. And I asked them what they needed. They needed more staffing. They said they're understaffed. And they said that they would love a new weight room. There's a green field next to their building, and I was thinking that we could build workforce housing for them because a lot of the officers come from a different town to help out their shortage of labor. And then in that new gym, we could also put a place where they can do martial arts, maybe a classroom where they can learn some social work to really help out and learn how to de-escalate things and really work with the crowds and just become better police officers. And someone said they also could get a shooting range, but I don't know if they want that or not. And yeah, and then I also walked some neighborhoods. And I just really think it's sad that we're all just crammed into these houses. I don't want to live in someone's backyard shed or something. So I just really want to know what happened to the American dream of owning a house with a nice picket fence and some land. So hopefully we can bring that dream back to Americans. And I'll be serving organic foods at Morning Glory this week and all year, hopefully. And I just wanted to let you guys know organic foods is better for you. There's no pesticides, herbicides, and it has more sustenance in it, so go organic. And I'm just so happy that I made the timer, and thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Colleen Maring.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Thank you for having me back. Council members Harris and Sweet, I missed you, I think, a couple weeks ago, but the invitation or suggestion of Councilmember Matthews, we at Northern Arizona Healthcare want to make sure we're here regularly, sharing updates and positive information as well as challenges that we're facing. As you're gonna hear for a while, I have no news about the hospital, but a new hospital, but I will be back, and we will be back when we do. I did want to thank Councilmember House and the entire council for their support of the Out of the Darkness Suicide Prevention Walk the Saturday before last. It was the only walk in the state of Arizona that met or exceeded its fundraising goal. So Flagstaff should be incredibly proud of its support for that cause. Yesterday, we celebrated Indigenous Peoples Day at Northern Arizona Healthcare, and I want to especially recognize and thank our NIH team members who serve our Indigenous patients in particular. Enrolled members of tribal communities make up about 1/3 of our inpatients at Flagstaff Medical Center, and we have Navajo interpreters, Native healers on our spiritual care team, nutrition staff who prepares traditional Indigenous foods, and amazing team members throughout our organization who help culturally educate and empower all of our staff to take the best care we can of the patients who come to us from our Indigenous communities. And finally, I'd like to invite council members. There is a formal invitation coming to your inbox, but October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we have the Courage and Care event that you hopefully have seen advertised and in the news on Thursday at Enchantment Resort in Sedona. We have, can't count them all here, 8 or 9 specialized providers speaking to education and awareness topics and urging women throughout our community to follow national guidelines and their providers' advice and getting screening starting at age 40 and earlier with certain risk factors. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity to share what's happening at Northern Arizona Healthcare and with our communities, and we will see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you. Next up, item 5A, we have proclamations and recognitions. We have October work anniversaries.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Joanne Keene, your Deputy City Manager. I am presenting our work anniversaries today on behalf of Shannon Anderson, who's on vacation, and it's in our new festive format. I can't recall if we had this last time, but it's a very special presentation today. Just as a reminder, we recognize those employees who are celebrating 1-year anniversaries, 5-year anniversaries, 10-year, and I believe we have a 20 and a 25-year anniversary today. I'm just going to go through a few slides. These are our employees who are celebrating 1 year with the City of Flagstaff. They come from all over the organization, including pros, including the airport. Most of these are pros in the airport. Water services, PD, housing, and again, more pros employees. Community development, more pros. It looks like this was a really good time for hiring for pros this time of year last year. And then also an individual in our building inspection program. We have Kobe Begay, who is celebrating 5 years with the city of Flagstaff. This is not actually a photo of Kobe, but Kobe is an efficient in softball. So this was a photo that we put in here, and it could be Kobe, but it is not Kobe. We also have James Holston, who's a water services operator too, is celebrating 5 years with the city of Flagstaff. Celeste Coop, a customer service supervisor. You'll see her out front when you walk in. Nice smiling face when you walk into City Hall, is celebrating 5 years. Brian Smithart, a police officer, is celebrating 5 years. And for 10 years, we have Juan Avitia Herrera, who is a parks technician, is celebrating 10 years for the city of Flagstaff. Also, Drew Emanuel, a police officer, is celebrating 10 years. Alex Churovsky, also a police officer, celebrating 10 years. 20 years is, our 20-year anniversary is being celebrated by Juan Para Corral. He's a public works supervisor and works out at our landfill. We have an individual today who's celebrating 25 years. Unfortunately, he could not be here today due to travel. But Sergeant Ryan Beckman started with the department on October 24th, 1999, under Chief J.T. McCann. He was the top cadet in his academy class, earning the Most Outstanding Cadet Award and the Physical Fitness Award. Over his career, he continued to be recognized through receipt of a Life-Saving Award, Meritorious Service Award, VFW Officer of the Year, and the City Manager's Excellent Award. He has received numerous commendations for his leadership in CompStat initiatives, supervision of the Metro Narcotics Unit, and on the Catherine Gorospe homicide investigation. In addition, Ryan was an FBI task force officer for over a decade and former president of the Arizona Narcotics Officers Association. He's currently a sergeant with a detective division and has additional duties with the Northern Arizona Regional SWAT team as a team leader. And he also spends time teaching at the High Country Training Academy and the local Citizens Police Academy. You've probably seen him at those ceremonies as well. So thank you, Sergeant Beckman, for your 20 years of dedication to the city of Flagstaff. And let's give him a round of applause. With that, Mayor and Council, just want to say congratulations to all of our employees, and we're just thrilled to have all of them on our team, on Team Flagstaff. Thank you.
That's a nice touch.
Yes. I had nothing to do with it. Thank you.
All right, next up is council liaison reports. Let's start with Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. As many of you were there, yesterday was our first official city holiday for Indigenous Peoples Day. It was a great event, highly attended. I think next year we're going to have to get a bigger space. Very informative. One of the main focuses on celebrating this day is to reflect and learn and just be community. And we definitely did that yesterday. There was a lot of food. We ran out, which is always a good thing. Not that we ran out, but that there was so many people there. And so it was just a great informative day of reflection and sharing and education. Learned a lot of stuff. So just had a proud day.
Councilmember Harris?
Thank you. I was at the Indigenous Peoples Day yesterday, and Councilmember Matthews is correct. It was just a great day. My intentions were just to stay for maybe an hour or so. I had another meeting, but I called and canceled that meeting because it was so informative that I wanted to stay. One thing that came out of that meeting was the business people who indigenous business owners, and they talked about how the city could be a resource to them in growing their business. And I did talk to one of the business owners about talking to our procurement department to see where they can perhaps be a part of that and get in on some of the jobs that we might have that they may qualify for, and they didn't know about it. So I did give them a name of a person, and hopefully they'll follow through and contact that person. And then today, I was at the Dedicatee Bank, a luncheon for NAU. Each year, the students select a faculty or staff member who the students think contributed to the welfare or the benefit of all the students on campus throughout the years. And that person has to have been an NAU employee for 10 years. And the neat thing about it is that the students make the decision and they choose the person. And so it's always an honor to be chosen. I was the 2007 dedicatee, so I was at that banquet helping to celebrate the new dedicatee. So that's all for me.
Vice Mayor.
I don't have any city commission liaison reports today.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Nothing today, thank you.
Councilmember Sweet.
Just a couple of quick updates. Tomorrow, there's the Mountain Line TAC meeting that I'll be attending. And I'm also going down to Prescott and attending the Rural Transportation Summit on behalf of MetroPlan. And then there's a Water Commission meeting this Thursday, 4 o'clock here in council chambers. Thank you.
Councilmember House.
Thank you. I was sorry to miss Indigenous Peoples' Day, the celebration yesterday. I had food poisoning, so was kind of laid up. But it sounded like an amazing event, so congratulations to everyone that put that together. Last week, I was able to attend I believe the first new fire truck push-in event for the city of Flagstaff. It was so much fun. We actually got to put hands on the truck and kind of physically push it into the station. We know that it was actually being driven, but we like to pretend. But that was it was a lot of fun. I got to get behind the wheel, so you'll see some pictures of that too. And it was also really cool to see some of the recent GFR graduates at that, as well as some of their families. This month is, of course, as you know, and thank you to Councilmember Sweet, I believe, who read the proclamation for Housing America Month last week. This is Housing America Month, and not particularly on behalf of the city, but based on some of my other past work in housing, I'll be participating in some online conversations on affordability and workforce housing in the coming weeks. The Commission of Diversity Awareness meeting is tomorrow, and I just wanted to kind of raise to council that they will be having or hope to have some future conversations about increasing the city's participation in MLK Day celebrations. That was brought to us by Director Justin Mallett at the university. Was saying that he would love to see their program become larger and see the city participate in that to a much bigger extent. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of upcoming meetings, there is a Flagstaff Housing Authority meeting on Thursday morning, and that is all for my commissions this week. All right, liquor license public hearings. So this time we are going to take them separate. So we will receive the presentation on the first application, which is Home to Suites, and then we will look at the second.
And
Hello.
Mayor, if you could just open the public hearing, make sure.
It would be
Thank
my
you.
pleasure to
You bet.
open the public hearing and then receive the staff presentation and then have the council questions. That was good for opening the public hearing. Okay. It's open.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Council. My name is Nick Almendarez, Sergeant with the Flagstaff Police Department. Before you today to present a new liquor license application. This is for a Series 7 beer and wine store liquor license at Home 2 Suites, which is located at 3451 South Lake Mary Road. This application was filed by Andrea Lukowitz, who's the agent, David Allen Lentz, controlling person, and Jeffrey Scott Lentz, controlling person. In my investigation, I discovered no derogatory records on the applicants and no current or historical liquor violations on the business. Found evidence the applicants, actually the manager has not been hired and the location is under construction with estimated completion date in early 2025, so no liquor license mandatory training has been completed yet. And a representative for the business was invited to answer any questions.
Thank you. And in this case, when the manager hasn't been hired yet, who makes sure that that person goes through the mandatory training? Is it us or the state?
The state requires this to be completed before they issue the license.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments on this one? I will entertain a motion.
Sorry, Mayor, if you could ask for public comment first and then close the public hearing.
Yes, I know
Thanks.
there's no public
Okay,
comment.
thanks.
Yeah, there is no public comment, but thank you for that reminder, Sterling.
And then close.
And I'm
the
going to
public-
close the
thank
public
you.
hearing.
You're welcome.
Now, council, I will entertain a motion. Wow.
Mayor, I will move to forward the application to the state with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. So now I'd like to open the public hearing on the second liquor license.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Stacy Salzberg. I am the Communication and Civic Engagement Director. Before I turn things over to Sergeant Almendarez, I wanted to just provide a bit of a procedural overview of this application. So the application you're considering right now is a Series 12 restaurant license. A subsequent Series 6 bar license has also been submitted for consideration, but due to timing, that's not going to be considered tonight. It's going to come back in a few weeks for you to consider. But ultimately, there will be 2 recommendations issued for this location, just at 2 separate times. I share this information because today should be focused solely on the Series 12 restaurant license application. And the other component to this is we've received an objection from a citizen within the community. This is something that is part of the procedural process and why we post liquor licenses for the public hearing. The objection that was included in your staff summary report references the Series 6 application. However, it was confirmed upon receipt that that objection applied for both the 12 and the 6. So I wanted to offer just that clarification and a little bit of information on the process. With that, I'll turn it back over to Sergeant Almendarez, but I will be available for any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, this one is for a Series 12 restaurant liquor license for Batty's Food Joint located at 409 South San Francisco Street here in Flagstaff. This application was filed by Jeffrey Craig Miller, who is the agent, Donald Lee Hewlin, controlling person, and Eric Sorensen Livingston, also the controlling person. In my investigation, I discovered no derogatory records on the applicants. However, there were current liquor violations on the business. This information for the violations were disclosed in the applicant package that you had received. The violations included licensee ceases to operate as a restaurant, which is a violation of 4-205.02D. 4-241.A, which is failure to follow the identification procedure prescribed by statutes, and 4-244.9, sell, give, furnish, or underage person with alcohol. This is all in the Arizona Revised Statutes. I also found evidence the applicants have taken the mandatory liquor license training, and a representative for the business was invited to be here today.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions before I open it up to public comment? Councilmember McCarthy.
Officer, you just listed some allegations. Who made those allegations?
Sir, Councilmember McCarthy, these are the listed violations where the business was cited through the Arizona Department of Liquor Control.
So at this property or for the people that are going to run this new property?
This is for the liquor license, which is at that location.
So that might be completely different people, is that correct? Because it was under different ownership or management?
Councilmember McCarthy, the dates for the violations and penalties are listed as July 27th of 2023, which is over a year ago, so quite possibly.
My other question is that we just got a blue card circulated. I'm just curious to know if that person would like to come to the mic and make a comment during public comment.
And if they would, I need a card. Any other questions before I take public comment? All right, thank you. So we'll take public comment here, and then we'll let you know if council has questions after that.
Very well.
So first is Olivia Gillette.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you for having me. My name is Liv, and I am here to strongly oppose the approval of this licensing for Don and his establishment Bandos, also known as Batty's Food Joint. I have worked in the hospitality industry in Arizona for over 5 years, and I have never encountered such consistent misconduct by an employer. Don has previously been denied this licensing, and I believe these past denials were justified. During my employment at Bandos, I experienced serious red flags. The first was an employee meeting addressing cocaine sales among staff. Shortly after, I was sexually harassed by one of Don's longtime friends and employees. Despite reporting the incident, I was forced to work alongside this individual for 2 weeks, and Don made excuses to keep him employed. His lack of concern for my safety led to my resignation. After quitting, I wasn't paid for 3 to 4 weeks, and my paycheck was unprofessionally delivered underneath my doormat of my home. Several other employees have since resigned due to disrespect, non-payment, and illegal activities at Bandos. Some of these employees face similar delays in receiving their wages, and even Don's manager, Eric, has sued him multiple times for unpaid wages. In addition, management has repeatedly violated liquor laws by allowing underage patrons in the bar and serving intoxicated customers after bartenders have cut them off. A 17-year-old was let into the bar, and their head of security would regularly walk intoxicated women home instead of calling for proper transportation. Myself and other former employees have filed numerous reports with the Department of Labor, the Health Department, and police regarding these issues. It is deeply concerning that despite 50-plus police reports, the police have found no derogatory records in their investigation, even though the police acknowledged to me and others that reports made of those actions were unacceptable and unlawful. After my resignation, I was confided in by several individuals who had been sexually harassed or assaulted by management. These victims are afraid, and some are even being sued by management to silence them. I have also compared Bandos' pay stubs with those from my other job as a massage therapist and esthetician in Sedona, and found that Bandos' pay stubs are missing legally required information. I strongly urge you to not approve this license. Bandos poses a serious risk to the safety of its patrons and the young people in the Flagstaff community. Please help protect our community from this dangerous establishment. Don does not need access to underage women who are drunk and often overserved by him. He will not protect them as he did not protect me when I was harassed, or many of the other women before me who have been harassed or assaulted. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Liv. Anthony Meal.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm a former employee at Bando's or Battie's Food Joint, and during my tenure there, I observed many instances in where underage patrons had gained access. We had several meetings before, right after my shift began, before I was sent out with a scanner. Excuse me one second. We discussed in these meetings that whether an ID scanned red or if it was red, and if we observed if it was fake or not, whether if they got the information correct, we were allowed to let these patrons in no matter what we were told. And for instance, one situation that happened, the owner and head of security were outside. I was stamping hands after they get scanned. My coworker scanned an ID, it scanned red. This person proceeded to get the information wrong, and then they objected to that. They walked over to the owner and head of security, which happened to be outside, and when it was maybe a brief conversation where they were able to eventually gain access and where I was told to give them a stamp and let them in. And then my coworker proceeded to get scolded directly in front of me outside and get reprimanded for that. That is one of the few red flags, and this is multiple things that I was able to. I worked there from beginning of July 2024 to the end of about September 20th, 2024. And this, in my short time there, I witnessed multiple things, from just letting in IDs no matter what, coworkers getting in trouble for it, for doing our job. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Is it Ashlyn or Anlin? Ashlyn Johnson?
Hi guys, my name's Ashlyn Johnson. I want to thank you guys for having this and allowing us to speak. Some of the points I just wanted to touch on, but not really necessarily go in detail, are marrying of bottles, where we are mixing bottles together, putting them in old bottles. They said it's fine as long as we take off the label, but most of the time the labels weren't fully even taken off, and we would put a new date on them from old alcohol, whether it be months old or just a couple days. I was told several times it was okay to serve underage people as long as they came in, because they were probably drinking somewhere else before, so that made it okay. We had a pretty bad gnats and termite, and a lot of them just flying around, and it wasn't taken care of for weeks. Gnats would fly out of the fruit things, be in people's cups, be in bottles, and it was just pretty gross. Sanitation overall is pretty bad. I'd come in, the floor was still sticky. I would try to help them clean, I'd organize, I'd offer to help clean, and I wouldn't really be taken seriously. For example, the back has a lot of misplaced old metal that's rusted and sticking out. Oftentimes the girls have to bring out heavy tables, and we're walking by it, hitting it, sometimes getting scraped. No one really takes sanitation too seriously there. The girls' bathroom also overflows and floods a lot, and there is not proper toilet paper or soap in there often. They also served false vegan food. They would advertise things as vegan, but they would be cooked with animal fat or animal products, making them not vegan. Things were often left out and not put in proper temperature and not caught for hours and hours. This happened quite often. Bartenders would cut off people and managers would keep serving them. A couple weeks ago, someone was cut off. A manager served them another drink, and when they left, they tripped, fell, and busted their head open. A bartender had to hold his head closed and was urged not to call 911. When paramedics arrived, they thanked her for holding his head together. She had found his underage ID along with his real ID in his wallet. A lot of the things in this establishment are really disappointing, and when I've asked for my tax records and other things, I have gotten no response for weeks. I've tried to ask both managers and no response. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have an online commenter.
Mayor and Council, I have Chris. Chris, you may go ahead and address Mayor and Council.
Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. I do apologize for my background today. This meeting kind of caught me a little off guard, and I'm actually out in Oregon fighting wildfires right now. I want to speak on this business, and earlier in the meeting, when the sergeant did talk about previous liquor violations at this location, I can confirm those were under the previous owner, Donald Hollen, and Eric Sorensen's partner. The agent, Craig Miller, same exact agent on the old Series 12. They're trying to rebrand right now as a new business. This place is truly a public health hazard to the city of Flagstaff and the University of Northern Arizona. I put pressure on the last chief of police to really look into this issue. I even took it upon myself to do a public records request. Sitting with me right here, this is 30 separate police documented cases, all involving underage drinking between January 1st of last year and April 18th. In there were 26 different arrests and violations for underage drinking and spirits in bodies of individuals under 21. That's alarming. And this was when this place was serving as a Series 12. Let's think of other Series 12 businesses, right? Chipotle, Pita Jungle, Buffalo Wild Wings. I've done audits of those places. I've also done audits of other Series 6s. Do you know how many arrests they have? The most that one location has in that same period of time is 2. This place has 24. In 5 of those police records, the police wrote in their description, the ID was clearly fake. There's gross negligence. I, too, worked for Donald for a single day last year. It took him a month and a half to pay me. He provided no sort of tax documentation. I believe that he's not paying his taxes. I've heard it from lots of my other peers. I've worked in bars in Flagstaff for 3 years. I have a solid understanding of the liquor laws. And I don't know how long this is going to keep on going on. I've reached out to the state. I've conducted audits with them. They have previously failed to operate as a restaurant. They're operating as a bar. That is why they are trying to get the Series 6. And I know that's not what we're here to talk about today. But for them putting it as a 12 is kind of a fail-safe. So if they don't get the 6, they can keep on operating just like they are right now. And it's gross negligence. And I want the city to put more pressure on the state. And I really hope that this new mayor or the new chief of police, which I've reached out to, left voicemails. He hasn't contacted me back. I strongly urge that he contacts me directly, and I can kind of talk with him about all the stuff that I pulled up on this location. When I read the sergeant's report and he says that he hasn't found anything, I did. It's right here. We need to dig a little bit deeper.
Thank you. Your 3 minutes is up, but thank you very much. Okay, council. Yeah. First, I'm going to close the public hearing if we have no more comment. Okay, so I'm closing the public hearing. Now, council, I'd like to hear from you. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. So is the applicant here able to speak to any of this? Yes. Oh, yeah, I wonder if we can hear from them if they have any response or rebuttal to any of this.
Can I come up front? Yes, please. Sort of responding to 12 poor individuals commenting.
Just a second. Just a second. I have a couple more comments. Yeah. I definitely want to, I'm glad you're here. I think that's important that you're here to be able to speak to these, this record. I think there's a lot of issues here that are above and beyond our approval or denial of a liquor license, which would be an interesting conversation in and of itself. And just to remind everyone, we don't actually approve or deny liquor licenses. We recommend approval or denial to a state board that will then look at it. I think our approval or denial carries a certain amount of weight, but it certainly isn't definitive. I want to thank our previous speakers for their bravery, for stepping forward and speaking publicly about their concerns. there seem to be a lot of concerns here, and in my experience, people only come forward to address this when they feel very passionately, and they only feel very passionately when there's a perception of great injustice and problems at hand. So I take that very seriously. Your actions speak as loudly as your words, just for being here. I want to acknowledge and recognize that. And procedurally, I don't know how it works to have the applicant speak at this point, but I would love to hear from them.
And they're not limited to 3 minutes, correct, as an applicant?
Correct, and as you've asked a question kind of to provide some response to what we've heard, yeah, he can certainly speak.
Okay, thank you. So please, go ahead.
Absolutely. Is there some water or anything that you guys have it? Nope. I remember in the back, old days, there used to be some water around, so it's okay. Mayor, council.
Could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, yeah. Mayor, council, I know a few of you. I don't think I've met you, Austin. Mayor, I know you've been to the trivia at our establishment before. Jim, I've known you for a while, not well, just in passing and saying hello. And Miranda, obviously, we had businesses in the area. Ms. House, I don't believe I've ever met you before, but I'm sort of at a little speechless and trying to grab. So if you give me, because I made a lot of notes on this. I've had 3 other liquor licenses. I did have the one violation. We take that very, very seriously. I had a gentleman that worked for us that had come up. He had been a manager at a college bar down in Tucson for years, and we brought him on to try to make sure that we did the things right and we moved forward in a good way. I have the text message of his apology where he misread the dates on the license. That doesn't excuse a lot, but those were one incidences. Those 3 things were the one instance of that. He actually quit his employment with me because he was in a nursing program and he was worried about how that would affect him, rightfully so. We went out and we spent $2,500 on buying scanners because I had ran a college bar once before, and I remember the bartenders sometimes in a hurry, door people that have relationships or know people, and they ignore things. It happened when we were all young, and it still happens throughout town. And the rule was very steadfast. Every single person goes through the scanner. And sometimes they do pop up red because I paid extra for a thing that said, hey, take a second look at this identification. It was an add-on that I paid, I think $200 each scanner for that, so that would be there. In the 12 years that I've had a license, I've had that one incidence of a violation. I took over Southside Tavern from some guys that had been in a lot of trouble, and I cleaned that up, and I developed a relationship with the police department and with the Department of Liquor. Working to make sure not only did we provide a place that fit the community, but we also provided a safe place where when people came that there was no violence, that there was no that sexual assault type of things were very much dealt with. Right now I have 2 girls whose entire job is to walk through our establishment looking for girls, and sometimes guys that have had too much to drink or don't feel safe. And the law says that we're not to serve somebody that's obviously intoxicated. It doesn't say that we can't serve somebody that has had a few drinks. And sometimes they grab those drinks from their friends and they get beyond that point. And their safety is super important to me. I have a 6-year-old girl in first grade, and I look at everybody as if they're my daughter, and would I feel safe with my daughter being in that situation? And I can look each of you in the eye and shake your hand and tell you I do feel safe in that situation. I got to put my glasses on. Don't judge me here. Oh, thank you. Because I made a lot of notes. You know, I have 3 people that are with us that worked for me that are upset and made a lot of accusations up here that are demonstrably false. 50 police cases against me, that's not true or at all. Sexual harassment, you know what, I think that the employee was inappropriate in today's time. He said, and I have her written documentation, I like your shorts. And she was getting ice out of an ice machine, and he should not have said that. I teach my staff not to comment on anybody's outfit. You know, we should wear what we wear to work without having anybody make comments on that. And then I investigated that and talked to approximately 10 different employees, seeing if there was any patterns within that. I had one other individual say that he said, hey, you probably made a lot of tips with that outfit tonight. And that was the only other comment. Nobody talked about anything else outside of that. He was told to no longer make comments. We had a staff meeting about that. I asked for the time to be able to investigate that properly. If we haven't ever, if nobody here has been accused of something that they didn't do before or know somebody that has, I'd be surprised. Again, I think that his behavior was inappropriate to say that, but not termination level, and I'll stand by that. The one individual that spoke first has wrote to my staff, my current staff, outside of the 2 individuals that are there, that are with her. And those 2 left right at that time. The majority of my 40 employees are still employed with us. And most of them came to us and said that they felt bad for the situation that was going on. She told them I was paying off our Flagstaff Police Department and they were under my bribery, and that's why I have no issues and why nobody has an, you know, thing. And sorry, I feel that's a very preposterous claim along with a lot of the others. She wrote in that she didn't care whether I knew because her goal was to F me over because I didn't fire that gentleman, and that she was going to F me over. I mean, how do you go beyond that? The violations, operation to cease and operate meant that we served somebody without checking their ID as a restaurant. And there she says that we have to, in some of her comments that she's made, that we have to serve food no matter what time we're open. That is not a true thing. In the Arizona liquor laws, you have to serve food until 10 p.m. I spoke with Herb, who used to be the liquor agent for the state for Northern Arizona many times, with the plan to purchase a Series 6 and to identify one, because we knew shortly, probably within 6 to 9 months after opening, that we probably weren't going to be able to make those numbers, not for lack of trying. I wanted to operate a restaurant. That's why I do trivia on Wednesdays. I actually don't make money on trivia. I do that because I was trying to build relationships on the food-wise to get more people in, because that's what I want to operate. I don't want to be out till 2 or 3 in the morning. I've never been denied a license. Everybody's been paid. Chris Rohde did an audit for somebody that was upset with us, and the audit came up completely clear. You can reach out to your own department and speak with Chris. Last week, the second gentleman that spoke here was upset. He wanted his paycheck 2 days before it was due after he quit. We advised him that it was due on this day, and because he quit, that it's due on that normal day. He threatened to sue us. I reached out to Chris personally and said, hey, Chris, this is what somebody's saying. My understanding is this. If yours is different, I'll write that check right now. Chris came back and said, no, your understanding is correct. A 17-year-old in the bar is, if somebody served them on top of that and knew that they're 17, that's just beyond preposterous. It is possible, guys, for us to have a 17-year-old in the bar while we're open. So legally, if their parents are with them, they're allowed to be in the bar, just not consuming alcohol. Actually, Arizona has no pay stub requirements unless the payroll is done on direct deposit. So that's an incorrect statement as well. Chris, who works for one of my competitors that was on the call right there, worked for us one day as a general labor for Tequila Sunrise last year, and that check was wrote. I don't know when he picked that up. I don't handle the disbursement of the payroll, but I promise you for $140 or whatever that was, there was no withholding of that. You know, I take my responsibilities in the town quite heavily. My wife owns 2 businesses. She's grew up here. We've owned a number of businesses over the years. I believe that I operate one of the safest bars. I've reached out to the college to have meetings with them multiple times and have progressed with that to how do we make it a better environment. I've reached out to the police department, had lieutenants come in to talk to them, walk them through what we do and what changes we should make. And those all come out like you guys are doing above and beyond what we typically see. We are right by the campus, and we do know that we have a lot of people that come in, and we do take that serious. We follow the law, go above and beyond the law. The law basically speaks very clearly. It says that we need to check an ID. We need to make sure it's that person. We do that by holding that ID up, looking, make sure that person, it's not defaced, damaged, outdated. We look for the height to make sure it's the correct height. And we scan that ID, which fulfills the legal requirements on that. And then we look through purses, looking for alcohol, drugs. It blows me away the amount of drugs that are in our town. I'm sure you guys hear that on a regular basis. I don't even partake in marijuana, so I'm pretty straight-laced on those type of things, but I'd prefer not to have any drugs in my establishment. It creates an unsafe place, and people don't buy drinks when they're on drugs, you know. There's no reason for that. You're right. You guys have an opinion that you provide for the state and for the liquor board, and in the 3 other instances I've been in front of this, it's been unanimous and there's never been an issue. I think that you guys obviously have been elected and hold a high value in this city. I think 12 years with one blemish on there says quite a bit. And I think if you look at police records to do with violence and fights, I think there's been 7 instances in 18 months total. And that's a weekend. I mean, you're downtown. That's a weekend at some of the bars. We have 7. And the way we do that is we make connections with our guests. We appeal to them on a human basis. We are then able, when somebody's acting out of line and we see that progression of alcohol, to go to their friends and go, hey, can you get this guy in line? Let's calm him down. Let's slow it down. And those things weren't by accident. You know, I went out and searched violence in bars, and there's a study, underage drinking, and there's studies, and I looked at all that information to try to make it a safer and better place. I think we are a safer place, and I think we're good for Flagstaff. I think it's the number of incidences we've had with people crossing the tracks and the number of fatalities. There was a push before COVID, and I think Jim and Miranda can speak to this. There was a push, and maybe Austin, to try to bring.
If we could bring it back to
liquor license. I
To
think
your
well,
case.
Well, I think that, you know, with the way the license speak is for the good of the public. And I think we are that, and we do a lot for the community. We are a much better place than what was there before as well, so.
Okay, thank you.
You guys have any questions for me? I'd be happy to answer.
Mayor, if I might, if there are going to be any more questions and answers, I would recommend reopening the public hearing.
Council, do you have any questions specifically for the applicant? Okay, well then I'm going to go ahead and reopen the public hearing. And Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. On one hand, we're hearing that there's been this raft of violations. I guess my question, and maybe this is more for the policeman, is if there were all that many violations, why wasn't something done about it? It makes me wonder if they were really that many violations, because doesn't the liquor board take violations pretty seriously? I mean, I heard one where someone fell down and the police came, and you know, whatever happened on that one, you know? That's my first question. And I don't know if the policeman wants to answer that or if the applicant wants to answer it.
You know, I can speak to that incident. We had a gentleman that was in our establishment.
I don't know if it was a question for the officer or a question for the applicant. Which was it?
Well, does it matter? I guess it does.
Yeah, just which one was it directed to?
Well, I guess I would like to ask both of them. And the applicant can answer it now, and then the officer can come back in a minute. Then I have one other question. Go ahead.
Councilmember, you know, that gentleman was on our property and was, and we attempted to get that individual home around 1 o'clock, 12:45, 1 o'clock. Around 3 a.m., that individual came back onto the property to try to gain access and buy drinks, you know, so approximately 2 hours later. We did make that phone call, and we did do that. Again, that person had been off our property for 2 hours at that time. And again, where we escorted that person away and refused them service. As far as the number of violations, I think that speaks for itself, because the liquor board does take it serious. After that first violation that we had and the only violation, they sent a number of individuals to try and make sure that we were following the law. And we continue to get letters that we passed. I also spoke when Herb moved on. I reached out to the new person that was in charge of that proactively to invite them to come into the establishment to move forward. I'm not going to be able to stop every, you know, person who wants to gain access to a bar in this town. But the police, as they would find individuals, they'd come in and we would pull up, and you would see where they came through, and they would have an ID, and that ID looked like them, and it scanned and was appropriate. And if it wasn't, we would have got cited.
And thank you for answering that. And there are no additional. Go ahead, Councilmember McCarthy.
I saw a letter from one of your competitors encouraging us to recommend that your license not be renewed or whatever, accepted. Do you have any comments about your competitors trying to stop you from getting a license?
You know, obviously, there's not many businesses in the world where your competitors can voice an objection to what you do or don't do. The number of people that come into my establishment saying, oh, I heard you were closing, or I heard you were operating illegally. And I go, where'd you hear that from? And they name my competitors. You know, I've sought legal counsel on that. You know, I believe that a lot of the stories you're hearing are directly because of that, because people hear stories. we're successful, you know. We weren't that first 6 months, you know, we had a snow, you could walk up the snow and walk onto our ceiling, to the roof of the building. We've worked really hard, to do things right and properly. My business is not worth, you know, selling a drink here and a drink there to somebody that shouldn't have a drink. But they are upset, rightfully so. They leave their establishment at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and they come to me. We average 1.2 drinks per person that walks in our door. That's what our average is. We pour a 1.25 ounce, not a 2 ounce, not a 1.5 ounce. We average 1.25. We provide the average person who walks in our door 1.25 ounces of alcohol.
All right, I think that answers my question. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And you can go ahead and have a seat.
Thank you.
And did you want to ask that same question to the sergeant?
I did. Sergeant, we're hearing all these allegations about numerous violations. Is that backed up by police reports and by liquor board reports?
Councilmember McCarthy, what I can tell you is in my investigation for 2024, the police have 172 total records for that location. That's for everything, even just simple bar checks, with 29 reports at the location. Typically what happens is when a police officer makes a report, generates a report, writes his report, once it's completed, it'll get disseminated out to the liquor control department. And as far as the threshold for investigations, I don't know how they handle that.
So council, we have several comments that you all would like to make. Does anyone have a question? And if you don't have a question, I'll close the public hearing again. Councilmember Harris.
I just want some clarification on the process. So when there's a complaint, that goes to the liquor board first and then back to you, or do you give it to the liquor board?
Councilmember Harris, we would complete the report and then forward it to the liquor board for their agents to investigate, and then it doesn't come back to us. They have their own enforcement.
So, and then they're responsible for taking it from there, is that correct?
Correct. They
Whatever
will
that is. Okay. Okay,
Yes, ma'am, correct.
thank you.
So there could be several reports, but one citation from the Flagstaff Police Department. So when you're called and you write a report and you submit it to the liquor board, but if there's a violation of a local law, then you would cite.
Mayor Daggett, that's correct. If there's a violation for a local law, an ordinance, we would take enforcement action. That report would still get generated and completed and sent to the liquor department for their investigation, and it would be administrative or criminal.
Okay, but that's how you could end up with several complaints and only one citation.
Mayor Daggett, is for their citation for the liquor license, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how they investigate and how they enforce. That'd be more of a question for them.
But in terms of our records, that's how you could end up with a stack of police reports, but have only one citation from one of our officers.
Mayor Daggett, typically each event or report is from a different time. So each incident would have its own arrest record or own investigation, and the citations would really depend on what the crime is and how it's investigated and how the officer carried out the enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. No. At this point, we're going to close the public hearing and deliberate. So council members, I see Councilmember House had a C in the chat.
Yeah, this is a very tough one because of the information that's been presented tonight and hearing from all sides of this. I have some pretty serious concerns regarding this license. I lean towards a recommendation for denial based on the testimony, but I feel like this is so convoluted, and there's so much more than just the license that's part of this consideration. So I just want to voice that I do have significant concerns here, and I think it's worth exercising caution as we approach this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. And since the public hearing's closed, can we ask Chris Rohde those questions about his response? He came in.
If you are going to entertain those questions or ask those questions and entertain answers, I would recommend reopening the public hearing again.
I'll skip it for now. In just the conversation, because this is very convoluted, a lot of different aspects, there was many things, though, said that have nothing to do with the liquor license. They were health department issues, and I just want to make sure, we kind of clean the floors on this one and focus on the use and how they handle the serving of alcohol and not cleansiness, bugs that has nothing to do with the liquor license. So I just want us to kind of clear that mess out and just focus on the complaints. I am concerned or confused, and maybe it's down to the health department or the liquor license department, possibly their inaction to complaints. So I just feel like there's more to discover, and I don't know that I have all the facts yet. There's just a lot of conflicting information, so I just wanted to share that.
Councilmember Harris.
I feel I'm on the same page, and I don't want the young people who have come forward to think that they're not being heard, but we have to, as they say, stay in our lane. And I think our lane says right now we need to look at whether we recommend this license to be moved to the liquor board for approval or for denial, whatever we do, but we can't act on those other complaints, and I would encourage that people take those to the other authorities that do have the responsibility for acting on those complaints.
Any other comments? Councilmember McCarthy?
I would like to make a motion that's a little out of the normal, so I'll make it, and then Mr. Sterling can tell me if I'm out of line. So listen carefully, Sterling. I move that we forward the application to the state with a recommendation for further investigation based on the testimony received at the public hearing. That's my motion. My comment is, it doesn't matter what we do, it's going to go to the state liquor board, and they're going to do their investigation. I've been on council 8 years, and there's been definitely one time, and maybe more, where the council recommended denial, and the state still approved it. So anyway, I guess my motion is basically, there's enough here to be in doubt, but in my mind, not enough to say definitely deny. So that's my motion.
And just clarification, Sterling, is that an option for a motion?
No, it's not. It's either a recommendation for approval or denial. The liquor board will determine whether they want to do further investigation, but for the council, it's just a recommendation for approval or denial only.
Okay, I withdraw that based on the advice of our city attorney, which I don't understand. We'll chat about it later.
So I'm looking for a motion.
Mayor, I am going to move to forward the application to the state with a recommendation for denial based on the testimony received at the public hearing and/or other factors.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Any discussion?
I'm going to support that motion because I know what's going to happen is they will do an investigation, and they won't just rely on what we say. They will investigate it and make a rational decision. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? Councilmember House.
Thank you. That's also just to what Councilmember McCarthy just said, why I'm making that recommendation is knowing that I want there to be that additional look at this, and I think by making that recommendation, there will be some further investigation. I don't know how it will bear out, and I want that to be recognized, but just based on the information that we've been provided with, I think that it does necessitate further examination. And I'm focusing on, to Councilmember Matthews' point, on the notice of, or the statements that were made on violations in terms of, that were directly related to the liquor license, not necessarily the other things that, albeit concerning, do not necessarily relate to this request. So, thank you.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you. And I too will be supportive of the motion, and I just don't feel like I have enough information, and I know that with it going to the liquor board, they will take a better look and a deep dive into it. And if what you're saying is true, then you'll be in good hands in that at that point. But right now, I don't feel like I have enough information. So thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second for recommendation for denial. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. So moving down to item number 8, consent agenda. We have items A through E. And thank you, Sergeant. Council, would you like to pull any of these items? Seeing not, then I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Mayor, I move to approve the consent agenda as posted.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. So then moving down to routine, 8A, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-37 and ordinance number 2024-22. The recommended action is to adopt the resolution, and then we'll need a second motion for reading the ordinance. So, council, do you have any questions for staff? Staff, do you have any additional information you would like to share with us?
I do not. I'm just here in case you have any questions.
Thank you. I'll take a motion.
Mayor, I move that we approve item 9A and adopt resolution 2024-37.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, can I get a motion to read the ordinance?
So moved.
A motion to read ordinance number 2024-22 by title only for the final time. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff City Code Title 10 Flagstaff Zoning Code by adopting by reference that certain document entitled PZ-24-00008 Concept Plan Review, Accessory Structures, Accessory Uses, Home Occupations, and Basement, basement garages, building stem walls, crawl spaces, and podium parking, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. And a motion to adopt?
I move to adopt ordinance number 2024-22.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we'll move down to B, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-38 and ordinance number 2024-23. Council, do you have any questions for staff? Then I will entertain a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mayor, I'll move to adopt resolution number 2024-38.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and can I have a motion to read ordinance number 2024-23 by title only for the final time?
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff City Code Title 10 Flagstaff Zoning Code by adopting by reference that certain document entitled PZ-24-00010 zoning map amendment process, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt ordinance number 2024-23?
I move that we adopt ordinance number 2024-23.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving down to C, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-39 and ordinance number 2024-24. Council, do you have any additional questions for staff? I will take a motion to adopt the resolution.
Mayor, I move to adopt resolution number 2024-39.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, and a motion to read the ordinance?
Mayor, I move to read ordinance number 2024-24 by title only for the final time.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff City Code Title 10 Flagstaff Zoning Code by adopting by reference that certain document entitled PZ-24-00134 accessory dwelling units, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt ordinance number 2024-24.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are moving down to the regular agenda. Thank you, Tiffany. Item number 10A, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-40. Hello, Christine.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Christine Cameron, Project Manager with City Capital Improvements. So we have two IGAs between the city and the state this evening, and both of them are for rail safety improvements. The first one is at Ponderosa, and so this will include fencing, signage, lighting, and pedestrian gates, and also a pre-signal for vehicles traveling north over that larger crossing area. The state's proposing to dedicate $1.25 million in federal highway funds for this. There is no city match. Anything additional that we want, we would have to pay for. If approved, we'll proceed with design, and then BNSF will be constructing the improvements with their third main line.
Council, any additional questions? All right. Was that a question or for a motion?
Christina, is this one of the intersections that at some point we hope to have wayside horns so that we can, have it be a quiet zone?
I am
And-
not sure if wayside horns is proposed for Ponderosa. I do believe our transportation engineer, Jeff Bauman, might be on the teams. And I told him to watch out for this item. I can find that answer for you, Councilman.
Well, my guess is that this is a separate project, but I mean, it was an obvious question, can we do them both at the same time if we're going to do them? Because we've gotten a lot of comments from people on the east side that when are we going to get quiet zones, and that's a legitimate question. But if you don't know the answer, we'll move on. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? I will entertain a motion to read the resolution.
Mayor, I move to read Resolution 2024-40 by title only.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? City Clerk?
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement between Arizona Department of Transportation and the City of Flagstaff for Ponderosa Parkway BNSF rail crossing safety improvements.
Thank you. And a motion to adopt?
Mayor, I move to adopt Resolution 2024-40.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving down to item B.
For the second crossing, we're going further east in town to Fanning Drive. And it's basically the same scope of work. The pedestrian gates, fencing, signage, lighting. We will not have the northbound pre-signal for vehicles. That's a much shorter crossing. It's easier to kind of gauge where you are in relation to that signal on Route 66. So, and the amount is $1.2 million.
Councilmember Harris.
Where's that crossing again?
It's at Fanning Drive, and so kind of where the old Sizzler was.
Misunderstood what you said. I thought you said Ben.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? I will entertain a motion.
I move that we read resolution number 2024-41 by title only.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, City Clerk?
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council approving an intergovernmental agreement between Arizona Department of Transportation and the City of Flagstaff for Fanning Drive BNSF rail crossing safety improvements.
Can I get a motion to adopt?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2024-41.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, moving down to C. Thank you, Christine. Consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-43 and ordinance 2024-26.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me just get the presentation up. All right, Steve, you want to start?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and community members. My name is Stephen Thompson, and I serve as a manager within the Sustainability Division, and with me,
Genevieve Pair 3 Resilience Analyst, also in the Sustainability Division.
and we are here to share some updates to the animal keeping code. There are two areas for these updates. The one area is to comply with state legislation. And then the other is to share some adjustments or amendments to the code, non-substantive, to make the code easier to understand, read, and help implement. And just so everyone's clear, when we're using the word animal throughout the presentation today, that is referring to livestock, such as bees, goats, chickens, things of that nature, not talking about your cats or dogs. And just a brief overview of what the required changes are. They're pretty minimal, mostly focusing around the number of fowl that are allowed in backyards of properties and addressing some of the fence line details. And Genevieve, who is a much better speaker to code and the standards within them, will take it away from here.
All right, thanks, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, there's 2 sets of updates. The first one is to comply with a state law that was passed earlier this year, and the second one is a set of updates to make the code easier to read, easier to implement. In that second part, there's no substantive changes to the standards. They're all the same, just a lot of kind of rearranging and simplifying. So for the state law, the first set of changes is for definitions. So there's a couple of changes in there just to kind of match the language that the state law uses and make sure our code kind of jives with that. And this is all in more detail in the staff report, but I'm happy to go into more detail if you have questions. So the second part has to do with the keeping of livestock. So Steve mentioned the state law required single-family residential properties less than an acre to be allowed to have up to 6 chickens. Our code currently says 5, so we had to update that. And then it also says that cities can limit the height of a shelter for fowl, or chickens, but state law uses fowl, so that's the word that we're using, to be no taller than 8 feet or no taller than the fence line of their property. So that's the other change we're making to make sure that this matches the state statute. So the second set of code updates are to make the code easier to implement. So the definition section has some minor updates, basically to clean up the standards, make things easier. And then for the keeping of livestock, there's a lot of moving around, clarifying and consolidating of text. Also moving the most important information to the beginning of the code. That's the table that has the main standards for the keeping of livestock. Also bringing the animal keeping code in alignment with the zoning code in terms of what zones allow animal keeping as a primary use versus those that don't, so just making sure this matches that. We also converted some text to tables for large and small livestock standards, so when you're looking at code, your eyes are drawn to tables, so really making the most important information and the standards in those tables. This also moved beekeeping into this section for keeping of livestock, just to kind of have all the standards for livestock in one section within this code, and moving permitting requirements to their own section, just to make sure that that is clear for everyone. And then in the permitting requirements section, the updates are just to clarify when a backyard livestock keeping permit is required. Also clarifying that the sustainability director can specify the form and what content is required, just to ensure that folks who are applying for a backyard animal keeping permit are meeting the animal keeping code. And that goes to the next bullet point, which is clarifying that the purpose of that permit review is to make sure that it is in compliance with this code. Also states that any reasons for permit denial must be provided in writing, and clarifying that any structures or fencing that is subject to a minor improvement permit, folks also need to get that permit as well. So that's kind of the high-level overview of all the proposed changes. So as Steve mentioned, we are looking for council direction on whether to approve the amendment as proposed, so that includes both the changes to comply with state law as well as the changes to make the code easier. However, the second option is to only approve an amendment that would cover the modifications to comply with state law, so we would bring that to you at second read if that's the direction you provide. But that is all we have for the presentation, so I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has and also hear what your direction is. Thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed in the state code, it specifically says we can prevent people from raising roosters. And of course, the reason for that is roosters get very noisy early in the morning. Does our code also include that?
Yeah, that was already in the code. So the state, we already had a couple of the things that were in the state law, so we didn't change our code since it was
Right,
already
that's
matching that.
in the existing code. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right. I will entertain a motion to read the resolution by title only. And if you could indicate whether you are recommending number 1 or number 2 that staff has given us.
Mayor, I will move to read resolution number 2024-43 by title only as proposed. So 1.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? City Clerk?
A resolution of the Flagstaff City Council declaring as a public record that certain document filed with the city clerk and entitled 2024 Animal Keeping Code Amendments.
Thank you. And can I get a motion to read ordinance 2024-26?
Mayor, I will move to read ordinance number 2024-26 by title only for the first time.
And a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? City Clerk?
An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Flagstaff amending the Flagstaff City Code Title VI Police Regulations, Chapter 6-03, Animal Keeping by adopting by reference that certain document entitled 2024 Animal Keeping Code Amendments, providing for repeal of conflicting ordinances, severability, authority for clerical corrections, and establishing an effective date.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll see you on November 5th. All right, moving down to D, consideration and approval of municipal service accounts, miscellaneous accounts receivable, transaction privilege tax, insufficient funds, and library write-offs. Hello.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. I'm Rick Tatter, Management Service Director. This is an annual item that we bring forward to you to write off accounts that have been delinquent and have deemed uncollectible at this time related to municipal service bills, our library accounts, miscellaneous accounts receivables, transaction privilege tax, and insufficient funds or return checks. This is just a sound financial practice that we bring forward annually to the City Council for approval. It's best not to recognize on your balance sheets funds that you do not deem as you will receive and be available for resources. Even though we are asking to write them off, we will leave these accounts available to possibly collect if somebody returns to business within the City of Flagstaff or opens an account. We'll continue our processes in that fashion. I do have to give great kudos to our customer service section team. They are very diligent on managing customers' accounts in the municipal billing area. Along with Jenny Lynn, who is our collection specialist, really focus and help people stay current or create payment plans for people to keep paying their bills either timely or through payment plans. And we have a great process in place, and it really shows by our write-offs. And we're very pleased that we're only bringing about 25,000 in write-offs of our municipal bills. That's 0.05%. It's the lowest I've seen since being with the City of Flagstaff. So great kudos to that team and the work that they do on our behalf. And with that, I do not have anything else and look forward to your approval.
Council, any questions, comments? All right, I will take a motion to approve.
Mayor, I move to approve the write-off stated in number D.
Is there a second?
If that works, I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Moving down to E, consideration and adoption of resolution number 2024-42 and ordinance number 2024-25. All right, Council, did you have any additional questions or comments among us or staff? Thank you. Okay, then I'm going to take public comment. First, we have Ralph Schmidt.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council. Me and my wife have lived in Flagstaff 22 years now, and we bought our over 100-year-old house in the Southside neighborhood 8 years ago. At the time we purchased the home, a tavern was operating as a locals tavern next to our house, and we had no issues for over a year until the tavern was sold and the new owner changed the business model to cater to college students with loud EDM, that's electronic dance music, with heavy bass. This came as a shock to us. The music, since the bar is less than 30 feet away from our house and it draws large, intoxicated crowds on the patio with screaming and yelling until 2 a.m. many nights. That was over 6 years ago, and we first reached out to code compliance, then city council at the time, and we noted the community commercial zoning, but we were dismissed and instructed to just keep calling the police. So over 6 years later, I stand here before you with the same problem. The only thing that has changed since is that one bar closed, even though they blasted music until their last day in business from their rooftop. And that same business is currently listed for sale, so it could likely come back again. The tavern is since on its fourth owner, who still runs the loud music business model. And just so you know, we fully support local business and the vibrant music scene in town. We very much participated in it as well, but not at the expense of local residents and historic homes. Fact is, families have been driven out of their homes because of this unbearable noise issue that has not been resolved, which is clearly not compatible with residences as outlined in the city's and the state's definition and purpose of the community commercial zoning. We do believe we have every right to enjoy our home, to have peace and get sleep in our house like everybody else in town. In my opinion, to not specify times for the different zones in the noise ordinance will continue this cycle, and it's just, in my opinion, not sustainable. The current proposed sound ordinance, in my opinion, would be a broad brush stroke with industrial zone-like times that would not work for residential and community commercial. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Candace Ryan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. I stand here tonight worn out and tired. We were all woken up not just this past Friday night, but Saturday night too. I know this issue can seem trivial, and for every one of us reaching out to you, there are many of us affected by it who are not. I know this for a fact. It's not easy to speak up in a town that feels like it leans towards businesses. As a public official, you have a civic duty to walk in someone else's shoes. And as history shows us, people tend to not care about an issue until it affects them. As it stands, there are two issues. A clear noise ordinance is needed, and there's a zoning issue. One does not fix the other. They both play important roles and both need to be addressed. The current definition of community commercial needs to be applied to businesses that are not, I quote, compatible with adjacent non-commercial development. A business model that keeps people up, takes away enjoyment of their home is not compatible. A bar or tavern can be in CC zoning. However, how that established operates matters. It is the difference between being compatible and not compatible. To me, it's common sense. As a noise ordinance stands, you might as well not have one. At least if there's an issue with businesses. Let's say it's 1 a.m. on Friday night and we're unable to sleep. We call into Flag PD. It's a low priority call, understandably, so it takes some time for them to come out. The officer comes out. By the time they speak to one of us or all of us, it's about 1:30-ish. The bar closes at 2. What is the point? 12 a.m., same issue during the week. The time should be based on zones. The sound study the city had done showed decibel levels varied by zone. That is standard practice. And mixed zone areas default to residential. It makes no sense to apply a noise ordinance that would be the same for all zones. 10 p.m. during the week, work week, and 12 a.m. on the weekend is not asking too much. We will still be dealing with excessive noise for several hours, several days a week, every week. The mayor is up for sale. From our experience, because the tavern is on its 4th owner since we have lived in our home, it's highly likely the problem will reoccur and repeat. That's where zoning comes in, making sure a business that is permitted to be in a particular zone is operating in a manner that adheres to the zoning definition. There have been comments about being neighborly. We have laws and ordinances in effect because being neighborly does not always work. It's not our job to manage the tavern. We've tried that route, I can assure you, twice with 2 different owners, and it was an epic failure. Community commercial zoning extends to Birch. And near Wheeler, there was a few individuals who were upset about the noise generated and an ordinance was made for them. Why is the South Side being treated differently? What we're asking for is not extravagant or unreasonable. There are serious health implications to living around this level of noise pollution as they have impacted my family. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And we have an online commenter.
Mayor and Council, I have Blake Witten. Blake, you may address Mayor and Council.
Blake, you're muted.
Thank you. This is my third public comment, for which I'm thankful. I care for school-age kids and I live out of state, so it's hard for me to fly into Flagstaff on short notice. The last time I noted that the Southside Tavern's loud business model is simply not compatible with an old Southside building that has poor sound insulation. But history shows that Southside bars and businesses are compatible with residences. Some of you may recall the Cafe Ole restaurant, whose back outdoor patio is even closer to my home than the tavern's outdoor patio. When I lived at my home in the 1980s as an NAU student and instructor, I loved the Cafe Ole. I enjoyed the lively patio crowds and moderately amplified music until about 9 or 10 p.m. at night. Some Flagstaff old-timers may also remember a bar called Shaky Drake Saloon, housed in what is now the historic brewing company on San Francisco Street. Shakey's was very loud, I can assure you, because I was a patron, and even hosted live rock bands. But the music and the crowd noise were self-contained within the building itself. My main point is that the Southside Tavern represents an outlier in the history of the Southside. The noise issue affects larger Flagstaff goals for a green community and affordable housing. My most recent tenant in my home for the past 4 years is NAU professor Holly Jackson, who gave me permission to mention her tonight. Holly is a great neighbor. She loved to bike to work on North Campus. That's a great example of green community combined with affordable housing for NAU faculty. But Holly reported increased noise problems with the tavern post-COVID, starting in 2021. In fact, Holly wrote a letter to this very city council to request sound relief, especially so that her young daughter could sleep at night. But without support from the city, Holly and her family moved from my home in December of 2023. My home has been vacant since. Finally, I would like to appeal directly to council members. I bought my home in 1984 and have remodeled and nurtured my home in the 40 years since. My long-term wish is to return to Flagstaff, to enjoy my home during retirement, and to rent in the interim. That's my business model, so to speak. But I can't realistically either return to my home or rent it if people can't sleep at night. I suspect that many council members also own homes. So I asked the members, if you found yourself in my situation, 40 feet away from a noisy bar, wouldn't you also appeal to the city for help, either through the zoning code or through a noise ordinance? Those are all of my comments. Do any council members have any questions that they would like to ask me remotely?
Any questions? Thank you so much, Blake. All right, council, any additional questions, comments, discussion? Councilmember McCarthy? No?
I asked the mayor if she was surprised that I have a comment. She said no. I don't know where to start here. I'll just bring up a couple of points. I don't know if they're in the most rational order. The zone that this issue is in primarily is called community commercial. I might note that the newspaper this morning said that I said that basically we should have these stricter sound ordinance for commercial. I'm not saying all commercial, I'm saying for community commercial, because that's consistent with the zoning code. It says that any businesses shall be compatible with residential. It also says that residential is encouraged in this zone. So I would think that we should do that. I would also point out that the speakers, all of the speakers that we heard tonight, they all moved this location before the noise issue became an issue. So you might call it a who came first issue. They were there first, and then the noise came. So I've been told that people checked out the area very carefully before they moved there, and there was not a noise problem. So the noise problem came later. I guess what I would like to know is if the council would even be willing, as a personal favor to me or to this residents, and I might add, it's not only these residents. There's a lot of other residents in the area. I know people that have moved that used to live east of San Francisco Street in this general area, but they had to move because they couldn't handle it. I've talked to a lot of people in the area. I went out with the police officers a year or so ago with a sound meter, and people came out of their house and, what are you guys doing? And we tell them, and they go, oh my God, please do something. This is unbearable. So anyway, my question to council is, considering that this community commercial in our existing code stipulates a need for compatibility, at least as a compromise, could we be willing to talk about different hours that the code applies? Right now it's midnight and 1 in the morning. I'm suggesting that, and really, in my opinion, this should apply 24 hours a day. So this is a severe compromise that we would say that the code would apply starting at 10 o'clock at night during the week, and then Friday and Saturday, it would start applying at midnight. To me, that's a very minimal compromise, and I request that we at least consider that minor change. Or something even earlier, but that's the numbers I've thrown out, 10 o'clock and midnight. Midnight 2 days a week, 10 o'clock on Sunday and the rest of the work week. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. And if I could, you said 12 and 1 is what we have currently, and don't we have 12 and, is it 12 and 1?
Mary Ann's shaking her head, yes, 12 and 1. So
It's
I'm
12 and 1.
suggesting 10 and 12.
10 and 12, okay, my apologies
Yeah.
for that.
And the other thing I might add is that last time we met on this subject, we said we were going to have a zoning discussion about this. And in my mind, that zoning, so-called zoning discussion would lead to something like this, that's saying in that zone, we would have a different rule than we have for, say, in the downtown area, which is not community commercial. It doesn't make any sense to me to have the same rule for an industrial area, a residential area, a community commercial area, or the downtown. So anyway, I hope we can at least talk about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you to the commenters and Mr. Witten online. My question was actually going to focus in, Councilmember McCarthy, very much on what you just said in terms of that zoning question. I honed in on that in the comments that you both made, and that we've heard in the past about the compatibility, in particular when it comes to the community commercial zone. So I guess my question is more of just a request that we do look at that zoning code, and I at least am willing to consider the request from Councilmember McCarthy on the time shifting as well. I would be interested in having that conversation, or just moving that forward if there was agreement on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Sweet?
Thank you. And I too had requested at the last meeting that we have the zoning discussion, and I had assumed we would have that prior to tonight. I don't know where I'm going to land on this, but I would like to further understand community commercial so that we can address the time question that Councilmember McCarthy is proposing.
City Manager?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your comments. We heard loud and clear at the last meeting 1 week ago that Council would like to have discussion regarding the zoning out there, and we plan on bringing that back to you. There was no way we were going to be prepared to have that discussion tonight. The request was just made a week ago. We can certainly put it in the queue to have it sooner rather than later. I cannot give you a time certain when that would be, but it would be coming your way. But that one will take some preparation. I mentioned this to Councilmember McCarthy earlier. We want to make sure it's a well-informed discussion. There's been a lot of discussion already about the history of that zoning code and its provisions, but we're fully prepared to bring that back at some point in the near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris?
I too agree with Councilmember McCarthy and House. I want to have the conversation about zoning, but I also want us to think very carefully about the precedent that we might set if we ignore the courage of residents who come forward to talk to us about issues in their community. It does not mean that they're the only ones that are suffering from this. It means that they have the courage. They're taking the time out, and I know they're taking the time away from their child to come here every week and tell us about this. I don't think that they're being unreasonable. I think that we ought to listen a little bit more carefully, and it is a health issue. It definitely is a health issue. If you can't sleep at night, you can't function. And kids, if they can't sleep at night, they can't learn. And so this is all over our city, and we're not just legislating for one person. We're talking about a whole city who may be affected by this. And so I think it would behoove us to stop, pause, take a minute to go back and look at this, because if it's happening to them, it could very easily happen to any one of us in our neighborhood, and then what are we going to do? So I say, let's talk about the hour change, and I know exactly where I'm going to land out on this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Matthews?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I'd like to have a deeper conversation about this zoning. It isn't everywhere, so doesn't affect other neighborhoods. It seems to be specific down in the south side area. So I think that, I think we really need to have a good, robust conversation about what this zoning, the intent was. Why is it different than, other parts of downtown and other areas? And how it affects businesses that have been there for a long time, not just this one that seems to be the topic of conversation. So I think there's two sides to hear out more thoroughly. Those houses are also in the community commercial. They're not residential. And so I'm assuming that people who have bought there, not blaming them, but even if it's quiet that week or that year, understand the risk that new businesses could move in. All I'm saying is those are the realities of that, and so understanding the zoning and getting some clarification to the definition and how we should enforce it is a conversation we really need to do sooner as opposed to later, so this issue doesn't continue to come back up. I think anything's on the table, changing the hours, although we have to consider how that impacts the businesses down there versus also the residents. So it won't be an easy conversation, but I don't know that we could make a decision on this agenda item tonight without all that information. I think we should just rip the Band-Aid off and let's really get an in-depth conversation and really understand what the intent of that was, and then make a ruling.
Councilmember Sweet.
Thank you. And another comment. I am listening to my colleagues, and I just really appreciate that we're taking this to heart. And I've thought about Candace and Ralph, and if this were happening at my house, how I would want our city council to listen, and I think that's what we're doing. I am in favor of pausing until we have the zoning discussion. And it does take courage for you to come, and it takes courage for the business owners to come as well. So I'm glad that you're here and that we've had the chance to really take this to heart. And I think in the end, we will come to a good decision, and I just really appreciate all of you taking the time and listening. Thanks.
Councilmember House.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to circle back on something that Councilmember Matthews said that I think is really important to the conversation, and that's the question of this zoning not being everywhere and being potentially unique in this one particular neighborhood. And I think part of the conversation that we'll be having is the question of why. And we've heard in past conversations on this the question of equity and when it comes to the neighborhoods, and just knowing some of the history of the South Side and some of the challenges that that unique neighborhood has had, or that historic neighborhood, excuse me, has had in terms of zoning and codes and things that have been put in place there. I think this is an opportunity for us to have that conversation at a deeper level and look at some of that equity question and look at some of that history more closely to make sure that we are not perpetuating problematic systems. So thank you, Councilmember Matthews, for bringing that forward. And yeah, that was all. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you. I don't think substantively my position on this has changed since last week. I am supportive of the ordinance as we drafted it and voted on it already, and I would be supportive of passing that tonight. I am sympathetic to the idea that during the week, 10 p.m. quiet hours might be a fair compromise here. I'm very reluctant to spread that out to the weekend. I know that the businesses rely heavily on income, revenue, well past those hours, and I think that's a relevant part of this discussion. And the other thing, I agree with the sentiment that is pervasive here, that we might have a solution in taking a look at the resolution of this ordinance and focusing in on the specific problems we're seeing in the community commercial. I would hold in abeyance any changes to this ordinance until we can look at that and specify some specifics within community commercial. Again, last week or last time we talked about this, my position was that the arguments that are coming across our desk right now are very specific to one location. They're very specific to a very specific place. This ordinance affects the entire city of Flagstaff. And we need to bear that in mind before we zero in on our sympathies for a particular party in a particular instance. And that's my responsibility as a council member. So coming up with that sweet spot sounds like a great idea. Earlier quiet hours during the week is something I could live with. I'm not going to support earlier quiet hours on the weekend. I think that we know that these establishments rely heavily on that income that they get during those hours, and the vibrancy of downtown depends on that ability, that commerce. It just really does, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I really think this conversation should wait until we can draft an ordinance specific, or we could make zoning changes specific to community commercial.
Sterling.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Council, just to point out, when you talk about discussing the zoning on it, there will be some legal advice, obviously, that would need to come into play with that. If that's going to be a discussion that you have later, I would just give you the heads up that there would be an executive session on that ahead of time. However, if you were just to move forward with changing the hours tonight and moving forward with it as drafted, other than that, you could move forward tonight. I hear both sides to hold off on this, and I just wanted to make sure you knew the option to change the hours and move forward tonight was still available as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris.
So I have a question for Sterling, clarification. So we could move forward tonight, but could we change the hours in this resolution tonight, or would we have to?
We could make that adjustment in this resolution, and I'd let Mary Ann speak to that. We could change the hours to whatever we want, yeah. Whatever, not we, you as the council wants.
But if you want to have the larger zoning discussion along with the hours discussion, then we would hold it all for a later discussion.
Can I ask the city manager, so you said that naturally last week was just too short of a time for you to get it. You have any idea when it might, just a wild guess?
Yeah, thank you,
Hate to put you on the
Councilmember.
spot.
We know it's very important. My best guess, bless you, would be within the next several weeks. There will be some work preceding this discussion. We want to make sure, again, that it's a well-informed discussion. When we talk about zoning, we talk about history of the zoning, the why, and a number of other nuances. Bless you again. So this is not so much a matter of us being just too busy. Frankly, even with a clean slate, I think it would take weeks to prepare for this discussion. Not months, but weeks, if that's any help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember House.
Thank you. Bless you, Councilmember Matthews. My question was just probably for Sterling. If we were to move to postpone, would that be a postponement to a date certain, or what would that resolution, or, motion need to look like?
It wouldn't have to be to a date certain if it's a motion to postpone, just until you have that other discussion that you would desire. If you just made a motion to table, then we'd have to bring it back next week, and as the city manager said, wouldn't be possible. But, so it would be a motion to postpone indefinitely or a motion to postpone until after we have the zoning discussion.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to put like a December 1st date? We could say
No.
until, okay,
No.
all right, thank you.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just point out, we're not asking for any changes in the zoning code. We're only asking for changes of the hours. So I admit that, you know, it's good to have an e-session, have a discussion about this. I just want to leave as a final thought, a sort of a meditation on one word, and that word is freedom. But I also want to point out that the word freedom is an incomplete thought. There's two kinds of freedom. The freedom to make noise, in this case, or to do any activity, or freedom from the effects of an other person doing that thing that interferes with your freedom to have, in this case, peace and quiet. Thank you.
Councilmember House, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will move to postpone for the further conversation.
I would gladly second that.
Any additional discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, let's talk about ADUs.
Mayor, I'm sorry, can I request a short break? Or I can just run to the restroom if you'd like to keep going.
You can request it.
I'll be back.
Do I see nods that people would like a 10-minute? 10 minutes. Am I on? All right, let's go. Item number 11A, ADUs, model plans, pilot program. Chop, chop.
Seconds.
I will say that the examples that you gave in your presentation, it's pretty exciting.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're excited and excited to talk about it. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started. So Genevieve Pear3 with the Sustainability Office, but we also have Adriana Fisher with the Housing Department, as well as Alina Crotty, who is also with Sustainability. So it's going to be a joint presentation talking about this program. Oh yes, and the title, Accessory Dwelling Units or ADU Model Plans Pilot Program. So the outline, we'll just talk a little bit about ADUs and why they're so important to our adopted climate and housing goals. I'll talk about a little bit of background research that city staff has done, including surveying the Flagstaff community as well as design professionals and looking at what other cities have done for model plans libraries, focusing on the city of Tucson. Then we'll talk about the next step, which is a request for informal proposals, or RFIP. Then we'll talk a little bit about what the Flagstaff ADU model plans library could look like. Then kind of just talk about the process and then give time for questions and comments. So before I do anything else, I will pass it over to Alina.
Hello, Council. My name is Alina Crotty with the Office of Sustainability, and today I will be talking to you about ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. ADUs are self-contained living spaces located on properties that already have single-family homes. They can be independent units like basement apartments or detached units in the yard. This project in particular is focused on detached ADUs, shown in the green box. The zoning code also allows for attached and interior ADUs, but it's not very feasible to develop model plans for those construction types. ADUs can be built into existing neighborhoods that already have access to infrastructure and transportation. Homeowners can use ADUs to generate supplemental income, and ADUs tend to be smaller and more affordable, making them appealing for renters looking for lower rent and utilities. ADUs can foster improved social connections within neighborhoods. They allow families to live closer together, which can strengthen community ties. And for older adults looking to downsize, ADUs provide a perfect solution. They offer comfortable living space without the need to move far from established communities. In regards to the carbon neutrality plan, ADUs are an essential part of our approach to meet housing goals while supporting sustainability efforts and reducing the city's carbon footprint. One of the key strategies in the carbon neutrality plan is ensuring that residential neighborhoods have the flexibility and appropriate density to integrate ADUs. This helps provide a variety of housing options while fostering vibrant and connected communities. We are also encouraging the rapid development of ADUs that are carbon neutral. Another important focus is incentivizing the creation of more affordable housing units by implementing various programs. We ensure that ADUs remain a viable option for our residents seeking affordable and diverse housing solutions. And with that, I will hand it over to Adriana Fisher, who will dive into how ADUs support the city's broader housing goals. Thank you, Council.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council members. I'm Adriana Fisher, Housing Program Manager with the City of Flagstaff Housing Office. Today, I'd like to highlight 3 key strategies from the 10-year housing plan. That are particularly relevant to our discussion today. The first one is about pre-approving standard plans and having them available to property owners to reduce planning and review costs. The second one is constructing and promoting net zero and net zero ready affordable housing when funding is available and encourage developers to do the same. And then the third one is to continue to evaluate and amend the current accessory dwelling unit zoning code standards with the goal of increasing supply. To emphasize the importance of this program, it's essential to recognize a shift in our housing focus from simply affordable housing to a broader perspective of housing supply. This shift is reflected in the 10-year housing plan with a goal of creating both market rate and affordable housing units. By prioritizing a diverse range of housing options, we can better meet the needs of our community. This ensures that individuals and families at all levels of the housing continuum can secure housing that is affordable, allowing no household to spend no more than 30% of their pre-tax income on housing and housing-related expenses. And with that, pretty much a little bit of what Alina said earlier, consider this. A senior couple looking to downsize can build an ADU on their property, move into it, and rent out their main home, generating additional income while providing a suitable living space for another family, like a doctor who can afford the price of the larger home, allowing the senior couple to also age in place. If a family wanted to build an ADU, this program would allow them to do so and contribute to both the housing and sustainability goals set forth by the city. This would allow your favorite barista, the medical assistant who supports your doctor, the dedicated teacher engaging your energetic child who throws you under the bus in front of the mayor, or the snowplow driver clearing your street this winter to find affordable homes that meet their needs. The reality is that everyone needs housing that is affordable to them. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Genevieve.
Thank you, Adriana. So yeah, just want to, basically ADUs are a great example of how housing and climate goals really are synergistic, and I think we've shown that, and we'll continue to show that with this program and this presentation. So moving on, before we did the model plans, or came up with a design for the model plans library, we felt like as city staff we needed more information. So we did a community survey on the Flagstaff Community Forum. That was last year from September to October 2023. We got about 350 responses, primarily from homeowners, but as well as renters too. So there's questions designed for everyone. We also did a targeted survey for design and construction professionals that work in Flagstaff, did in-depth interviews with some of those design and construction professionals, as well as did online research and some interviews with jurisdictions that do have ADU and other pre-approved model plans programs. So took all of that data to figure out what our next step was. And before I move on, I just want to highlight that we do have sustainability and housing staff up here today, but this is also collaboration in addition to sustainability and housing with building safety, planning, and other city staff. So just a couple of the Flagstaff community survey results. So earning additional rental income was the most common reason that homeowners who responded to the survey said that the reason why they built an ADU. So 2/3 of those respondents said that rental income helps cover their homeownership costs. An interesting finding was that an ADU lease wasn't always short-term or long-term. It kind of would change depending on what owners needed. And sometimes it was also a place for household members to live, also for visiting friends and family to live. So that was an interesting finding, that the use of the ADU changed throughout time, but that there were all these different options available to homeowners. Another interesting finding was that 50% of homeowners who responded who did not have an ADU are interested in building one, which is great, but only 14% of those said they would be likely to build one in the next 1 to 3 years. So the question is, how can we increase that chance of folks who are actually likely to build one, who are interested in building one? And of the homeowners who responded who don't have an ADU, 68% said they would prefer a detached ADU if they had one, and 50% said model plans would help make it easier to build an ADU. There's also a desire for many different plan sets and different designs to meet diverse housing needs, as well as work in lots of different neighborhoods. So the design professionals, there was general support for model plans if the designer can retain ownership and charge a fee. That would allow the designer to work with the client to ensure that the ADU would fit on the site and was properly oriented. So don't just want plans out there that people can access and have no idea if they'll actually work or not on their property. So having that designer work with the client to help make sure it works, as well as navigate the city building permit review and approval process. Also, support for ADUs being all electric and energy efficient because of their small size, especially due to building code requirements. It's a lot easier to fit everything into an ADU if it's all electric versus natural gas because there are separation requirements. So, and just the potential to build a very energy efficient structure that's small, so having low utility bills for occupants as well is a benefit of that. And then just wanting to have plans that have pre-approved options to minimize the need for making changes to the model plans that kick them into custom review, and then you lose that benefit of the cheaper, quicker process that you would get with model plans versus a custom review. So some of the barriers that we found in building an ADU, kind of put those into 3 categories. So the first one is barriers related to city codes. Now I will mention the ADU zoning code section has been, council just approved today, updated to comply with the recent state law. So the city can no longer require parking, and other design standards have changed as a result of that update. So some of those have changed from late 2023 when we originally found this in the survey. The middle column are the barriers that an ADU model plans library could help alleviate. So those are the cost of designing an ADU or drafting plans, finding someone to design an ADU, navigating the city design and permitting process, as well as city permitting fees. So we felt like those types of barriers could be remediated through a model plans library. And then the last column, other barriers, are other things that are out there, some of which the city may be able to influence in the future potentially with future programs or partnerships, but those are kind of outside of the scope, or dealing with those are outside of the scope right now of this project. But just kind of interesting to look at what are the different barriers that people identified to building an ADU. So moving on, I mentioned that quite a few cities have model plans libraries. This is just a very small sample. It's become a pretty common thing in cities across the United States. The American Planning Association has stuff about it, like it's becoming a thing that cities are wanting to implement to help address their housing supply issues, as well as provide more variety of housing for their residents. So the one that I'm gonna focus on tonight is the city of Tucson. So they're in the process of developing their model plans library. It is up and running, but not all the plans have been fully approved as pre-construction plans, so not all of them are accessible yet. But these are 3 that have. So basically, people can go online, look at the potential designs, click on the design details button, and if they like it, they can contact the designer to get access to the full set of plans. This is what it looks like. So you can kind of see renderings of what it could look like in someone's lot, and then they show the floor plans as well. So it's just kind of a neat option that people have before committing to anything, just to kind of see like what's out there. So we would like to emulate the city of Tucson. City of Phoenix is also working on this as well, but they're a little bit not quite as far along in the process. So basically there's 4 program goals. The first one is to create a model plans library to host a growing inventory of pre-approved all-electric and energy-efficient ADU model plans. The second and most probably biggest goal is to grow the supply of ADUs. So that's the whole purpose behind the ADU model plans, is to increase the supply of ADUs in Flagstaff by simplifying the process and reducing the cost to design and permit ADUs. So ideally, the model plans building permit process, the public pays a lower building permit fee. It's already been reviewed for compliance with building codes, so when it comes in, they're just looking for compliance with zoning codes. So the review process should be quite a bit easier, as well as less expensive than a custom plan review process. Also part of the goal is to increase awareness of ADUs and their benefits to Flagstaff, and then connect interested homeowners with design professionals and other ADU resources. So there's a lot of benefits. The ultimate goal is to make it easier and cheaper to build an ADU in Flagstaff, as I mentioned, for public, having lower and more predictable design costs, lower building permit review fees and quicker review time, allowing the public to preview plans for free and making it easier to find a designer. First, designers can reuse the plans in different locations, but also retain ownership of their plans, and any compensation they receive covers the work that they do to make sure the plans fit on the site and that they can get their client through the building permit review process. And potentially, if it's less time takes less time to go through that process, perhaps they could help more people build ADUs than they otherwise could through custom plans. So again, the ultimate goal is to get more ADUs out there and make it easier and cheaper to build one in Flagstaff. So this is where we are at right now. So we have drafting a request for informal proposals scheduled to open in November 2024. Then we'll have a selection committee comprised of city staff and external partners who will choose up to 10 winning designs. Then the winners will submit full construction plans in early 2025 for building plan review and approval and receive a monetary award upon approval. So just to clarify, the initial RFIP will be looking for kind of a preview of the plans, and then the selected will go through that much more time-intensive process to create full construction documents. Early to mid next year, there'll also be a separate outreach campaign to raise awareness of ADUs, of the ADU model plan library, and have a voting through social media to allow people to select a People's Choice Award. And that will coincide with when the library is launching. And the library will go live. Target is June 2025. So I mentioned drafting the RFIP. These are some of the design requirements that we have been mulling over based on our interviews and work and looking at what other cities are doing, but basically trying to, again, meet those sustainability as well as housing goals to have all-electric, energy-efficient construction that allows residents to have low utility bills and live in a really comfortable space, and also just making sure it's a place where they can live, that they have the amenities that they need. But also applicants will be encouraged to be innovative and creative in lots of different categories. So kind of trying to meet Flagstaff diverse housing needs, offer lower construction costs, and if they want to incorporate additional sustainability features, definitely encouraged to do so. And then the library, once it's up and running, as I mentioned, we'll kind of do what Tucson did, something similar to that, where you can preview winning designs, public can browse the designs, contact the designer to access the full plans. As I mentioned, designers would retain ownership and charge a reuse fee or licensing fee that would be capped as part of participating in the library, and then it would cover that work to make sure the ADU fits and get through the building plan review process. So this is the next step, so finalizing and opening the RFIP, having the selection committee select the designs, having winners submit full construction documents, uploading the plans into the ADU model plan library, doing that public outreach campaign and social media vote for the People's Choice Award or favorite plan, and then basically having it be live and then do program evaluation. So this is a pilot program, so we really want to do the best we can this time and learn from it, and then see, okay, what can we keep doing to increase the supply of ADUs in Flagstaff? Yeah, so that's all I have as an overview of the program, but happy to take any questions or comments that you might have tonight.
Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to see this tonight. It was a discussion, I've mentioned it several times up here on the dais, of Nicole and I have had since before I ran for office. So that took a long time, but I love the timeline that you're showing now. That's really exciting. I have a question, just thinking of, people maybe being hesitant to add ADUs. There's a great benefit, though, to it. But with doing the all-electric sustainability, solar on the property, do we know how much the price difference of requiring that versus allowing them to not go full all-electric and all the other requirements?
I don't have that to you today. I can look into that. I will say that having
Jenny.
talked to designers, I'll let Jenny come up, but I will say too, one thing is just, they're saving money by not installing natural gas infrastructure to the ADU, and as well as having everything fit. It is really hard to get everything fit due to separation requirements if you have like a natural gas heater, for example. So I don't have exact costs for you, but I do know that it makes it easier to construct if it doesn't have natural gas.
And that's kind of what I was looking for, just to point that out, that if you don't have to draw in 2 utility lines in just one, does that offset the expense of additional solar? And
So we are not going to require having solar panels, so they'll always encourage it. We're going to ask them to be net solar ready, to show where solar panels can go. So really the requirements would be the all-electric and having a cold climate heat pump would be the main things, and complying with the 2024 International Energy Conservation Code. But yeah, solar would be an optional thing, but we want to make it so that they can add that in the future. Jenny, do you want to add anything?
I was only going to add that clarification about solar, and from what we've seen, the offset of essentially not having to trench for a natural gas line onto an ADU property like this beautiful one here has significant cost savings. There is an upfront cost to a heat pump over a gas furnace, but we think those should even out. And we are trying to basically make any efficiency or sustainability add-ons be essentially cost neutral.
Thank you, because that will be, I think, a deciding factor for people that own a home and want to add an ADU. It's like, well, if it's going to cost me an extra $20,000 to build an ADU with these specifications versus doing it on my own, that could be a deal killer. So I just want to be present to that and making sure that we're looking into that. But I'm very, very excited about this. Thank you.
Councilmember House?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you very much for the presentation. This is very exciting. I am really excited to see what will come forward for our community. I'm wondering if we are looking to exercise any sort of flexibility with the basically the exterior look of these units. You showed some of the examples from Tucson, for example, and they are very much in a very Tucson style. And I know that one of the major concerns for developers in this area are some of the aesthetic requirements that can be put on development. So are we looking to have these design models based in, fitting the characteristic of the neighborhood and those sorts of things? What sort of flexibility is looking to be built in there?
Yeah, there are very Tucson, the ones in the Tucson plan. So one of the design criteria is likely going to relate to aesthetics, but not be prescriptive. So thinking about using Flagstaff design traditions, Flagstaff design materials. The zoning code, I believe, due to the updates that just got passed, there used to be a requirement for compatibility between the main home and the ADU, and I believe that has gone away. Okay, Dan's saying yes. Okay, so we won't be able to require that an ADU look like a house, but the goal is to get visually appealing designs and have a variety of designs that could work in different neighborhoods. But we don't have the regulatory requirements to require that they look similar to the house. So I would hope that that would be up to the homeowner. So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I'm hopeful that will be a design. One of the selection criteria is to be visually appealing and have those design traditions incorporated, as well as offer pre-approved customization. So the same ADU could be modified slightly, like with window placement or exterior materials and things like that. So I'm hopeful that that will make it flexible enough that there'll be enough options for people to be able to put ADUs in a variety of neighborhoods.
Perfect, thank you.
Councilmember Harris.
Thank you, Mayor. Couple questions. First of all, will the average lot in Flagstaff, Ponderosa Trails, for example, be able to accommodate an ADU? Do we know that?
Yeah.
What size lot would I have to have in order to put one on?
Great question. So ADUs, now with the zoning, I wish I had reread the zoning code update right before this, but I believe there's more flexibility in the size allowed for ADUs. So we're hoping to get a wide variety of sizes of ADUs, down from like really small ones to larger ones that can be placed in different places. So, Dan, well, I'll finish this thought and then I'll let Dan come on up. In terms of a place like Ponderosa Trails that have pre-existing CC&Rs that restrict ADUs, that is another thing entirely that's up to the HOA and the members to change. So at this point, we're just focusing on creating the library and trying to get a wide variety of designs that, in places where an ADU is not allowed or really, really challenging to build a detached one anyway, that wouldn't be able to be placed there. But there are lots of lots I'm hopeful they would be able to be placed on.
Oh, that leaves me out. So my next question then would be, are there any plans to talk to homeowner associations to try and express to them the situation that we're in with housing and how they could be a part of the solution and not the problem?
Yeah. You know, I think that as part of the outreach campaign about the benefits of ADUs, I think that's where that would fit in. Because I agree with you. There are probably lots of places where there could be ADUs but are currently restricted. Obviously, the city can't change CCNRs, but I think we can definitely try to educate and let folks know the benefits. And I feel like lots of people in those neighborhoods probably want an ADU as well. So I live in one where it's restricted too, so I understand. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone? Vice Mayor?
Yeah. I realize this is a pilot program, but why are you maxing it out at 10 designs? And looking forward at the, hopefully, the success of all this, is there going to be a cap on the number of designs? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So we are doing 10 initially just to launch the program because we are going to have a monetary award for the winners, and we're also covering their review fees to be able to be turned into a pre-approved model plan. So that's not the fees that the public would pay for. That's just we're paying one of the fees. So basically that's part of making the process cheaper for the public to use the plans. So we have limited funds, but the goal is to evaluate how that goes and then probably open up the library in the future, either to future RFIPs or to allowing folks to just submit plans that they want, and we would review it to make sure it meets the criteria. So it's really meant to be a growing inventory. So it's just an initial launch of 10 plans, but yes, definitely don't want to cap it, want to have that keep growing, keep increasing the diversity of plans available to different folks, and looking at, did the design criteria get us what we wanted? Yes or no, you know, maybe somewhat not, you know, and then kind of tweaking that so that we can continue to tweak this and make the library be the best that it can be.
Additional questions? If I am remembering correctly, you were going, so the RFIP is going to go out beyond Flagstaff, correct?
Yes. Anyone, I believe, who's over 18 and works in the US will be eligible.
I think that was my main question.
Okay.
Council, anything else? This is beyond exciting, so thank you so much for bringing this to us. I can't wait until we have these plans that, and encourage more ADUs, because what a great way to gently densify neighborhoods and provide those smaller units for people who would prefer to have a smaller unit, and it fits within their budget in a better way as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I can come back with an update once we have the library up and running and can share that with you.
Yes, we would like that very much.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, open call to the public, and I do not see anyone. Informational items 2 from Mayor, Council, and staff, and future agenda item requests. Let's start with Councilmember House.
Nothing for me tonight, thank you.
Councilmember Sweet.
Nothing tonight.
Councilmember McCarthy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank the council for being open-minded about a little more discussion on the noise issue. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
I'm good.
Councilmember Harris.
I'm good too.
Councilmember Matthews.
I'm just going to say that looking forward to the NAU homecoming game this Saturday. That's all I have. Thank you.
City Manager. All right, we're adjourned.